not helpful. So,
The Little Prince. We'll start with that one. What'd you think?
I really liked... So this is really good because our dance teacher, Maite, has been telling me for a while that she loves this book, and also that I look like the Little Prince. Because every time we walk along the street, I've got my coat open and my scarf blowing, and she's like, oh, you're just the Little Prince again. So it's very good to read the book.
It is a very cute book, and it's all about keeping your, like, innocence in a way. You're being like a child again. Because... our main character is not the Little Prince, for the most part. It is a guy who was flying, and he just kind of crashes in the middle of a desert.
He is flying, he's a pilot, but I really like the way he introduces it to us. Because he begins by telling us about a drawing he did as a kid of an elephant that has been eaten by a snake. But it looked like a hat from the outside. It's just like a lump and a straight bit, so it just looked like a Freddy Krueger hat. And he's like, well, these adults don't have imagination. I have to draw the inside part so you can see the elephants in the hat. He's like, these adults didn't care about my art, so I decided to do something different from art. So I just decided to be an airplane pilot. That's actually very impressive, though.
But that's a huge part of the entire story. It is all about, like, these people didn't have any type of imagination. I did. And then the Little Prince comes along, and he's like, can you draw me a sheep or something? And he draws a sheep and things like that. And it doesn't really look that great, but the Little Prince then sees him draw, like, the boa with the elephant inside, and he's like, oh, it's a boa with an elephant inside. Doesn't look like a hat.
Yeah.
And he gets it immediately because he has that type of imagination.
He has that childlike imagination, and they even represent that with the sheep. He makes him draw several times the sheep. And he's like, this one's not good, this one looks too old, this one's whatever. And then he just draws a box, and he's like, well, the sheep is inside the box. He's like, this is perfect.
That is really, really good. Yes. He'll even eat baobabs.
Yeah. There is one moment which is, well, I guess just racist, basically. They mention someone's making like a mathematical discovery. An astronomer is making a discovery and he's presenting it to a conference, but when he does it in Turkish clothes, they ignore him. And he comes back like a year or two later in European clothes, and they're like, this is fantastic. Like,
yeah.
That's sad.
That does happen. I didn't take notes of it. All I remember is that he goes from planet to planet.
He does.
I think that is pretty much the entire book, right?
It is, yeah. There is the part of the...
We're telling the story of him going planet to planet
the Little
before
Prince
he comes to Earth.
Has a flower, and you see it on the cover there. He has one flower on his planet that he's in love, in love with, and some volcanoes that he cleans.
Yeah.
And
the flower is kind. It has a personality.
But he leaves it when he goes away, and there is a fear of, like, well, is it going to get, harmed by the elements while I'm away exploring? But he goes to explore anyway. And he says, I was too young to know how to love her. So, basically, you're right, yeah, he goes from planet to planet. Now, can you guess, I'm going to describe these, and you can guess the fun game we can all play at home. Which of the planet's leaders do I empathize with the most?
The businessman.
No. So, first planet we see a king, and the king is like, cool, I've got a subject, fantastic. I'm in this tiny little asteroid mini planet, and I rule over all the things. And he's like, well, you rule over no one because you're the only person here. It's like, not true, I've got you now, you're my subject. And he commands him to do things. The interesting thing is, like, he yawns, I think, and the king commands him not to yawn.
Yes.
He's like, well, actually, I have to yawn. It's like, oh, then I command you to yawn.
Yes.
It's like, but I don't need to anymore. He's like, Then I command you to yawn when you need to, and not to when you don't need to.
Yes, he is a fantastic king. It's like, I will only be able to do what I can, but I want to have control over everything, or appear to.
Yeah, it's two really opposing things.
Yeah.
Because he wants the guy to be a subject, and even when he leaves, he's like, well, then you're officially my ambassador, or whatever. Like, he has to seem like he's in control, but then someone has taught him to be reasonable. And it's like, I can command the sun to set if I do it at, the time that the sun would naturally set. And he even explains, like, this is how you be a reasonable ruler. You give commands that are reasonable to people, that they're able to and happy to comply with.
So that's your favorite?
No. Well, that was maybe one of my favorites, but it's not the one I think I am.
No, you are the one who is always turning on and off the lamp light.
No,
You're
well,
just working 24/7.
Yeah, that's what people know about me.
Yeah.
Now, the very next one they go to, well, first of all, he gets made Minister of Justice on that little planet, and he's like, but who will I administer justice to? And the king says, to yourself. That's the most important kind of justice of all, is like, to yourself, which is judging yourself. That is true, but still irrelevant. Like, he's just on this planet with one person. So, of course, he leaves, and says the grown-ups are very strange. But he goes to a planet with a person who really wants to be admired, and this is the one I empathize with. And he's like, do you admire me? And he's like, I don't know what that means. He's like, well, do you think that I'm the most handsome and intelligent and richest person on the planet? You're the only person on the planet. And he's like, well, then say the thing that I told you to say. And then he just leaves. Like, that's all that happens on that planet. And I think he's a good guy.
I don't even remember that guy, to be fair.
I liked him.
The absolute best is the fox. Like that.
Yeah. The fox is coming now. There's two more we'll just briefly touch on because you mentioned them already. One is the businessman who's just like counting up things. He says he owns all the stars. And I think there's a little message against capitalism here. Because he's like, I own all the stars. And the guy's like, well, what do they do for you? Nothing. What do you do for them? Nothing. But I count them all. And then it turns out that he just keeps the running total. And he's like, well, what can you do with the things you own? He's like, I can write it on paper that I own them and put it in a drawer.
Yep.
And that's money in the bank, It's like, well, then you
no
don't
one
do
else owns
anything.
them, so I can.
Yeah, like it's pointless. The lamplighter's funny because he was given an instruction and then never knew how to deviate from the instruction. So he was told, turn on the lamp every month or something, but whatever way his asteroid's been spinning, a month is now like every 30 minutes. So he just has to like constantly turn on the light off and on, and was never able to ask for different instructions, which is, your office workers, basically.
To be fair, that's also a little bit
and
of
the businessman is a bit of that. Well, maybe.
I was told to do this, so I always did it.
This is true.
There's also a drunkard.
I skipped the drunkard. I forgot about him.
He's just drunk. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I see here in the book, chapter 11, the second planet was inhabited by a conceited man.
Yes. So I think that was a good fellow.
Yep. Yep. To conceited men, all other men are admirers. Yep.
And the last one was the geographer, like the academic, and he is writing like important books about geography and reading and writing books and compiling information, but hasn't even bothered to like stop and smell the roses. He hasn't bothered to notice what's in his own planet. He's like, I can tell you all about rivers. I've learned all about them. And it's like, right, are there any on your own planet? I never thought to look. And I think these are all like lessons for children. Don't be like these adults that are making life mistakes. Don't be the businessman that never knows how to stop working. Don't be conceited. Don't be vain like the king, and all this kind of stuff. So it's giving you some good information there. But the fox, tell us about the fox.
Yes, the fox is the best story. Basically, they become friends. There we go.
They do.
So they talk about what taming means.
The fox has to tame him. This surprised me at first.
Yeah, so of course the boy asks, well, what does it mean to tame? And for the fox it meant more or less to be friends. And so the boy becomes friends with the fox, and they learn to basically rely on each other and become, of course, really good friends. And eventually they kind of have to say goodbye, and it's really sad.
The fox is just like, you don't have to chase these chickens around. It's kind of boring. And then the adults chase me around because I'm chasing the chickens around. It's like, would one of them not just tame me and be my friend?
Yeah, basically. And it's a bit of a sad story. Because he's like, well, you have to do this to be my friend. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And I don't know, just saying goodbye at the end is really, really sad.
But there's a lesson in it. Because he realizes, he sees flowers. And he realizes that his flower is no longer unique. But then he realizes that he's tamed it and made it... The word taming is problematic, but essentially because he's made like a relationship with the flower, then it's important to him and unique to him, And this is the way people think about their pets. Like, their dog is special. And it's like, oh, you could just take another dog. It's like, yeah, but I've got a connection with this one, So that's... or children. So that's...
Tame your child. For some of you, should.
That's kind of the message there, and I think it's very nice. And of course, they have a sad parting at the end. But the little prince says to our guy, you're always going to have something special because I'm going to be up. One of those stars you see, he's going to be me laughing up on my own planet, and no one else has that. And just keeps him young in a way, like keeps a little bit of that childlike adventurousness to him.
We haven't even touched on the little prince dies.
There is also that.
There's also that. He gets bitten by a snake who he became friends with in a way. But basically the snake said, yeah, if you want to return home, just tell me and I can do it.
Yeah, he says he's not dying. He says this is just a method of getting him home. I guess we don't know if that's true or not.
But we see him in the guy's arms losing consciousness. And it's like, oh, he's most likely dying.
Yeah, but he tells him, don't worry about it. But,
And it seems that, he goes to his own star and everything's fine. And,
let's give it a yeah.
Let's do that.
I think we both really enjoyed it.
It was good. I may not remember it in like a year's time.
That's surprising though, because this is supposed to be like PJ's recommended this to me before. Like this is people's favorite book. Like people love this book.
I think it is good. I don't see why people would say it's their favorite unless you grew up with it. I think
maybe
because we are adults, like keeping your childhood dreams and all that is something maybe more important for children.
But that's the message of the book. So we have failed to...
But our dreams are dead and gone.
It's too late for us.
They've exploded like a raisin in the sun. Langston Hughes, by the way.